situation at the helm of the Eagles involving their love child Oscar Allen has just entered precarious parameters as we head into free agency in 2025. In what for the longest time seemed to be a seamless succession plan for the Eagles in the transition away from their long-standing key pillars in Josh Kennedy and Jack Darling, their protege Oscar Allen and the Eagles have just received some ominous news surrounding the deterioration of Allen's knee, with overseas health specialists stating that his knee shares characteristics that of a 40-year-old. Does this leave the door open to a new start at another AFL club, in hopes that Allen can meticulously work through this debilitating knee injury? Furthermore, are the Eagles willing to gamble and offer Allen a long-term contract with him set to enter free agency at the end of 2025? Let's find out. Well, Oscar Allen. Do we declare Oscar Allen gettable in free agency at the end of 2025? That is the burning question, and with new grounds to believe that maybe that could be the case. Is this the final drop in the bucket for the West Coast Eagles when it comes to the patience and belief that Oscar Allen can be the long-term successor for Jack Darling and Josh Kennedy? The reports are out there. The point that Oscar Allen's knee is in a serious situation when it comes to the health status and longevity as an elite athlete, albeit at AFL level. Now we know that joint specialists can be hyperbolic in their diagnoses with what they have to see with elite level players. Is it a matter of mitigating risk and liability issues, or do they just want to be realistic and give athletes the worst case scenario, thinking beyond their AFL career? Now, what's the story of Oscar Allen, the footballer? He was drafted in 2017 at pick 21 and has served the Eagles for 8 years now and would be in the top 25% of the club's highest earners, meaning he would be a restricted free agent at the end of next year. Now, with Oscar Allen being a restricted free agent, Collingwood or other clubs can offer Oscar Allen a good deal that has long-term security, but West Coast can match it and force a trade. Alternatively, West Coast can also not match it and seek compensation for losing a player without returning any picks going back their way. I made a video on Oscar Allen probably 3 to 4 months ago, and sure, the narrative there may have been different. He's a homegrown player, he's the captain of the club, and these facts still stand, but the reality is, if you are not secured on a long-term contract and you are still in the room of free agency, then there's no reason why clubs won't try their luck, like clubs have with Bobby Hill and Braden Maynard. So we're having that conversation here, and we're going to try to rationalize it and play devil's advocate against the Eagles. Who do the Eagles have at the moment? They've got Jake Waterman, who was top 3 or top 5 in the Coleman medal. They've got Job Shanahan, who it seems like maybe they are organising a contingency plan by bringing in this young, prosperous draftee who can play that key position very well if he does so become one at AFL level. There's Williams, who's a 22-year-old key forward that they're grooming at the moment, along with Ryan Marriage, who was a mid-season draft signing maybe a couple years ago, who can play the key position as an undersized tall. The other thing is, are West Coast willing to give out a 7-year max contract for someone who's averaged a goal and a half a game and played 93 games in 7 seasons? Now, granted, he's played for a losing club since Josh Kennedy has retired, more specifically, so the opportunity going into the forward line is going to be much more limited. So the full potential of Oscar Allen hasn't been tapped yet, and that would be the argument from the West Coast side. But I'm sure clubs looking from a different scope will look at using that as leverage in any negotiations with Oscar Allen. So, hey, you're only averaging a goal and a half. You were a great third key tall forward when Josh Kennedy and Jack Darling were around. You did really well in 2023 and had a relatively injury-free season as the main man, but that's not enough of a large sample size to work with. Where does he fit at Collingwood? I mean, he will be 27 by the end of 2025, and it's always a gamble on key forwards who have injury concerns, specifically the one that's coming to light with Oscar Allen. And given the cost it would prove to get him over to the land of the black and white. So that question is, are Collingwood willing to take over that risk the West Coast are considering right now? And it can really backfire. But is this the type of opportunity where there is risk, but the the reward is so great that, yes, sure, there's a big difference. There's a large scale between what could possibly happen on the bad end of the spectrum and the good end of the spectrum. Collingwood would need to consider whether they're willing to risk whatever their assets are that they'd have to give up in the trade to have a chance to reap the rewards of this risk. At age 27, by the end of 2025, you could probably say he's got 5 or 6 really good years as a key forward, especially with the resources that elite athletes have at AFL level to prolong their career. Look at Scott Pendlebury, any key forwards who are doing really well. Lance Franklin went on to 35, 36, Tom Hawkins, Taylor Walker. There are examples of key forwards being able to prolong their career at the highest level. I feel like Oscar Allen would be a perfect bridge between McStay, Checkers, Membry to then also be a tutorer for the players like Charlie West, Illaru, who wants to potentially develop forward craft as well as being that ruckman. So there is that real opportunity for Oscar Allen to take on a leadership role as he is the captain at West Coast. So I'm sure that's something that he would like a part of moving over to Collingwood, to be within some sort of leadership capacity. Now, what is the cost on the trade table for Collingwood? He's a restricted free agent. It's likely West Coast would match the offer, or potentially they don't match the offer and want to get a good return in compensation, seeing as they may finish in the bottom 6, they might get a really good first round pick, or they could match the offer and maybe Collingwood can deal with them a first round pick and a second rounder. So that's something that West Coast would need to consider. You got to predict the future. Is Collingwood's first rounder going to be a high first round pick, or are Collingwood going to go deep and it's going to be a really poor first round pick? It's really hard to surmise the outcome of that, as the future is unpredictable. So that's something West Coast would have to take a bet on themselves. You just have to look at the value of some players that went in this current trade window just gone by. Bailey Smith only went for a first round pick. You'd say Dan Houston went for under. So there are situations where we would think players were worth more, but they go for less given the circumstances and the capital that certain clubs have available to them when trying to facilitate these trades. Lastly, we have mentioned that the AFL are allowing more access for clubs for future picks in advance, being able to trade futures 2 years in advance, which means you could bundle up 3 first round picks. Granted, Collingwood don't have that available. Do I think Oscar Allen, given his current circumstances, is worth 2 first round picks? Probably not, given the risk. And of course, the projected salary cap increase from 2023 to 2025 is roughly a 30% increase. So there is definitely room for one more big fish to play for Collingwood. Go Pies.
Darling goes for the ruckman instead, and he wasn't far off Bailey Williams. Here's Tim Kelly. Whoa, magic hands! And Oscar Allen puts through a third. They're not going away. Allen for a second goal. He has a way. What a start.